The Activision Blizzard conversation continues, as it should, ladies and gentlemen, following this massive lawsuit that the DFEH issued against the company over what they call a frat boy culture that has enabled harassment, abuse, and misconduct. Activision Blizzard has been forced to be backed up against the wall, and employees are doing everything in their power to protest and make sure that their demands are met. The lawsuit alleges things like cube crawls that had drunk men going around harassing women in cubicles as a contest, females being held back from promotions because they might become pregnant, criticized for picking up their children from daycare, kicked out of lactation rooms, men would openly joke about highly inappropriate topics, and then there's the whole incident of a female employee who took her own life during a business trip because she was just so heavily harassed. Nude pictures of her being spread around holiday parties and whatnot. Just some truly, truly awful, disgusting, and nauseating stuff. And since then, a lot's happened. J. Allen Brack issued his non-statement of a statement that was all just empty platitudes and him blowing smoke up his own ass. And Fran Townsend's statement in particular is what really instigated a lot of the protests right now, where she essentially denied all of the allegations, called all of those stories old, out of context, distorted, and basically said things that do not go in line with what employees have been saying when they've been speaking out about their experiences at the company through social media. So since then, 3,200 current and past Activision employees signed an open letter, essentially calling the response unacceptable, calling the corporate behavior egregious, and expressing that they'll not be silenced, they'll not give up, they'll not stand aside. And that began with the walkout here, which actually had a major turnout, and alongside that walkout, a list of demands were issued with the statement of intent. And you can see a picture right here of what that looks like. This is just the in-person, by the way. The virtual one was significantly larger. Employees refused to work on Wednesday, July 28th. And of course, CEO of Activision, Bobby Kotick, finally did some damage control after shit hit the fan when he apologized to employees and released the following statement in which he, as J. Allen Brack did, offered empty platitudes, expressed that every voice matters, as if that's a statement of fact, when Bobby Kotick has not upheld that tenet. And beyond that, he's just kind of gone out of his way to try to make it seem like he's being super proactive about all of this when employees' demands have actually not been met. And that is the topic, or one of the topics, of today's video. But before that, as a reminder, there's the whole Cosby Suite situation that has been exposed by this Kotaku article. And these are all of the developers in question who are still in high positions within Blizzard or at other studios, which is just ridiculous. And the industry as a whole is starting to really kind of come together to combat what's been a very prevalent culture within the industry as a whole. Now, as far as the response that employees gave to Bobby Kotick, it was pretty scathing. They basically said, our demands have not been met. We're not going to just let this slide just because of this statement, whose intention is clearly not to protect employees, but rather a statement to protect corporate interests from the legal ramifications of what they have enabled here with this awful culture. This is the group's response, the folks organizing things like the walkouts and the protests. Here's what they had to say. On the evening before our employee walkout, Activision Blizzard leadership released a statement apologizing for their harmful responses to last week's DFEH lawsuit. While we're pleased to see that our collective voices, including an open letter with thousands of signatures from current employees, have convinced leadership to change the tone of their communications, this response fails to address critical elements at the heart of employee concerns. They did change their tone because they need their employees to work in order to make money, and with how loud protests have gotten, they were forced to change their tone. They didn't change their tone because they actually regretted the way they responded. They didn't change their tone because they care about the issue. They changed their tone because it is what they need to do to protect themselves, to protect the leadership team, to protect the corporation as a whole. This is all purely self-preservation on the part of executives. The statement then proceeds by highlighting what Activision Blizzard did not address, some of the demands that have yet to be met, the end of forced arbitration for all employees. As I explained in a previous video, mandatory arbitration is a contractual agreement that if there is a legal dispute, employees won't go through court, but rather go through the conditions that the business essentially sets, and there is ample study showing that arbitration definitely favors the business and the abusers and the corporations rather than the victims who have a legitimate case. And it's just egregious. And in light of all these allegations and in light of all the stories that have come out, arbitration is certainly not a good look for a company with a track record, as we have seen, of enabling just some of the most awful behavior. Next up, worker participation in oversight of hiring and promotion policies. So Bobby Kotick said right here that they're gonna make some changes when it comes to hiring practices. Earlier this year, I sent an email requiring all hiring managers to ensure they have diverse candidate slates for all open positions. We'll be adding compliance resources to ensure that our hiring managers are in fact adhering to this directive. Notice how this bit right here focuses on managers and not giving employees more power. But management is the issue. Management are the ones who have enabled this kind of culture. They're the ones who've let these predators in and have allowed them to continue to work there. People don't trust management, and that's what they're asking, that ground floor employees have a voice and a say in hiring practices, and Bobby Kotick expresses no intentions of letting that happen. This right here is a gesture and initiative that's as good as useless. Next up, we have the need for greater pay transparency to ensure equality. As far as I can see here, there's nothing on how they're going to ensure that employees are being paid fairly, as this is still an ongoing issue, which is why not long ago, employees in revolt decided to share their salaries in a spreadsheet that went public after news outlets began reporting on this revolt, and the pay disparity between various positions, especially as far as executives go, was immense. And there were folks within Activision Blizzard who couldn't make ends meet despite being veterans, despite having worked at the company for a decade or more. And then the DFEH lawsuit raised the issue that females tend to get paid less than male cohorts, even if they hold the same position, the same job, are doing the same amount of work at the same performance and efficiency. The female will get paid less just for being a female. So greater pay transparency would allow the company to be held accountable should there be unequal treatment of employees as far as salaries go. And then last but not least, employee selection of a third party to audit HR and other company processes. Employee selection is important. In Bobby Kotick's statement, he said that I have asked the law firm Wilhelm Hale to conduct a review of our policies and procedures. That's a decision that Bobby Kotick made. It's Bobby Kotick and the executive team who decided to hire this law firm without speaking to employees, ground floor developers, to staff. This is just the decision he made, and the employees don't know whether this is a trustworthy third party to look into this stuff. And the answer to that is likely a resounding hell no, given that this law firm has been known to be a union-busting firm that Amazon has hired in the past. They don't have a good track record of protecting employees of a company. They have a track record of looking out for corporate interests. So this right here is most certainly not reassuring. Bobby Kotick maintains that this specific law firm was hired to ensure that we have and maintain best practices to promote a respectful and inclusive workplace. But for a lot of people, it seems very clear that this law firm was hired to protect the corporation, to protect it from potential unionization perhaps, to just keep an eye on how things are developing so they have legal options when things are negatively affecting the organization, the company. When the perpetrators are the ones doing an audit on themselves, when they're the ones hiring the people to investigate them, obviously that's just not going to be reliable. So you do need the employees who are actually being victimized and abused and have been kind of suffering the brunt of the enabling on the part of leadership, who should be the ones hiring a third party that can hold HR and other company processes accountable. We can't have the enablers policing themselves. We need an impartial third party policing all this stuff and serving as Overwatch to ensure that the right parties suffer the consequences and that the right changes are made. Finally, the statement concludes with, today's walkout will demonstrate that this is not a one-time event that our leaders can ignore. This is important. Persistence. One walkout on one single day is not going to disrupt things enough that it'll force change. The disruption has to continue over a long period of time to a point where it's affecting Activision Blizzard's financial guidance and to the point where it's actually going to get them in trouble legally. It actually has to affect the corporation over the long term for them to actually do something about this stuff. They don't have a heart. They're not going to do this out of the kindness of their heart. They're going to only do this when the bottom line, when the corporate bottom line is affected. So that persistence is absolutely important. And it's great to hear that we will not return to silence. We will not be placated by the same processes that led us to this point. This is the beginning of an enduring movement in favor of better labor conditions for all employees, especially women, in particular women of color and transgender women, non-binary people, and other marginalized groups. We expect a prompt response and a commitment to action from leadership on the points enumerated above, and look forward to maintaining a constructive dialogue on how to build a better Activision Blizzard for all employees. Today we stand up for change. Tomorrow and beyond, we will be the change. Hell yes. It's also worth noting that there are reports out there that some men have also faced the kind of harassment that Activision Blizzard has enabled. Scrolling down here, Kotaku details how reports included unwanted shoulder rubs, being propositioned for sex, harassment within the first day, and even a game around the office where men would try to grope one another's genitals. There are seemingly a number of male employees who have spoken out about their experiences, while also emphasizing that women have it way worse than men do, and it's far more widespread for women especially. And beyond all that, a few other horror stories have made their way online as news outlets start investigating some of the awful behavior within Activision Blizzard, like this article right here from Vice, published on July 30th, 2021, whose headline reads, "Blizzard recruiters asked hacker if she liked being penetrated at a job fair." This happened on August 2015 during a major cybersecurity conference going by the name Black Hat. And back in 2015, among the attendees was Emily Mitchell, a security researcher who at the time was looking for a job. And she was wearing a shirt that said penetration expert. And for those who don't know what the context of that is, pen testing is a term that the industry uses for a security audit. And so, yeah, it sounds weird, but that is actually the term. And so she was wearing a shirt that was appropriate for the profession that she was pursuing. Like, if you're at a cybersecurity conference, you know exactly what that shirt means if you're working in that field. And at one point, she walked up to Blizzard's table to see what positions were open, and employees immediately began to harass her and say inappropriate stuff. Blizzard employees first asked if she was lost. Another one asked if she was at the conference with her boyfriend. Another one asked if she even knew what pen testing was. And then the direct quote from Mitchell was that one of them asked me when was the last time I was personally penetrated, if I liked being penetrated, and how often I got penetrated. I was furious and felt humiliated, so I took the free swag and left. Now, funny enough, she would actually make her way high up in this industry. By 2017, she became the chief operating officer at Sagita HPC, this security firm, and Blizzard had reached out to that company to hire them for security work. And of course, Mitchell immediately recognized that it was Blizzard. She told the founder and CEO of the company, Jeremy Gosney, hell no, fuck no, and shared the incident with him. And so the CEO proceeded to write a sternly worded letter to Blizzard saying that's unacceptable what happened then, and there are some conditions that you have to meet if you want to work with us. He left the door open to work with Blizzard with some special conditions listed out here, and Blizzard, instead of, taking this to heart and actually, responding in an appropriate manner, decided to go all legalese. Blizzard was eager to get her on the phone with their lawyers. They made it clear that they were not interested in agreeing to any of our terms, just a lot of empty promises that they were taking the report seriously, which is, how Blizzard has operated. They always say they're taking it seriously and continue to enable this kind of behavior, that it would be investigated internally, and assured me that they do conduct harassment training. Ultimately, it felt like they were more interested in gauging their own legal exposure and placating me. Now, eventually, Mitchell did report to Black Hat organizers what transpired, and Blizzard has not been invited back as sponsors after 2015 ever since, which, that's how you handle that. And then beyond that, another story from Vice reports that an Activision Blizzard IT worker secretly filmed colleagues in office bathroom, and specifically it was noted that the camera was put under a sink in a manner to point at the toilet, and this all happened in 2018. Going back to the article, you can see that the employee in question is Tony Ray Nixon, and this man has since pleaded guilty, and these are the kinds of people that Activision Blizzard houses, enables, and protects. Then we have a new report here from IGN, who spoke to a number of Activision Blizzard employees about their experiences, and we have more horror stories coming out now from this article. Something that is continuously emphasized is that for many Activision employees, the DFEH lawsuit and all the allegations in there were completely unsurprising, given that they've been living with this stuff for years and years. One employee noted how World of Warcraft in particular housed a number of predators, and because of the amount of money World of Warcraft makes, the people at the top were untouchable. The people at the top of the development team, like Alex Afrasiabi, who is among the worst abusers within the company, so bad in fact that the lawsuit singled him out and called him out by name. That same lawsuit talked about the lactation rooms where men would kick women out so they could have meetings there. But beyond that, IGN reports that rooms designated for breastfeeding didn't have locks, so there'd be times when, taking advantage of that, men would just walk into these breastfeeding rooms. They would just stand there and stare, and women would have to scream at them to leave. Now, IGN states right here that they understand the breastfeeding rooms have since been updated with locks added to doors. The fact that this wasn't even implemented in the first place is kind of ridiculous. The fact that they had a freaking patch breastfeeding room so that women could handle their affairs privately. There are more reports of women who'd have to pick up the slack for men. The lawsuit alleged that men would come in and play video games while women were left to do the work that they wouldn't do, and IGN's report states that female employees would work overtime and fix problems left behind after their male peers went home. Other discriminatory elements include women being dinged in their employee evaluations for not getting along with verbally abusive bosses, and also that women would be evaluated on their social and cultural skills, whereas men would actually be evaluated on their technical ability to do the job. One particularly awful story involves a female employee who got notice that there might be serious medical complications with her unborn child, and so she requested that she be given time off to handle this situation. She had to go through an agonizing process of trying to get time off approved by her manager for this. She was told she had to return in 2 weeks to check again, and then 2 weeks later she was told that she couldn't take time off to handle a serious medical condition regarding her unborn child. This is even though she had paid time off available, and she shared her traumatizing experience with IGN by stating, "I was forced to get on the Family Medical Leave Act in order to go to my appointments. Blizzard made that as difficult as possible, and the doctor's office couldn't figure out how to approve it when these were appointments every pregnant person would have. My contact and my insurance company finally got fed up and pushed everything through. If I hadn't had a benevolent insurance contact, I likely would have been dropped." Now, one upside presented to this article is the fervor of employees and how they're not just going to drop this, they're going to keep pushing for change, with the article noting that in the wake of Kotick backtracking from the original statement, one source said that the change is undeniable at this point. And then another IGN source provided this quote, "We don't plan on just waiting around for a response. We're going to continue to push for change internally to our companies. We're going to keep these demands going. We're not letting this go. At this point, we don't expect that we're waiting for leadership. We expect that leadership needs to get on board with us." To close this video off, I'd like to share some information relayed to me by a former Blizzard employee who reached out to me via email and shared some of the horror stories that he saw or experienced. And just as a general note, this whole situation has blown up enough that a number of Blizzard employees have reached out to me about this whole situation. But as far as this specific source goes, who obviously shall remain anonymous, apparently there are a number of employees who are scared that their female friends, family members, or partners will get hired at Blizzard because they know what the culture is like. My source alleges that it wasn't uncommon for active bets to be running on who can sleep with who first, and even more so, it was done to women who were already married or had a boyfriend or girlfriend. Reports of men who body shame women for eating in a way that didn't placate to them because they wanted the women to look a certain way that was appealing to them. And so if somebody had if a female employee had a bacon sandwich, they'd be shamed for that. And this was apparently a commonplace behavior that would happen unsolicited throughout the company. There's one incident involving a male supervisor who was married who got one of his employees pregnant and then left her and abandoned her, and so she quit the company to raise the child by herself. When this was brought up to HR as punishment, HR essentially moved him to another Blizzard location and promoted him. So he's at a higher position, just somewhere different. And the same supervisor apparently had a tendency to go around asking women if they needed any jars open so that he could, show his muscles as he was opening them or something, which is just pathetic. And then as far as running bets go, apparently one incident involved men making bets on who could make this one specific gay female employee straight. My source also specifically called out Michael Gilmartin, a former vice president of Blizzard. He would go out of his way to promote men who actually engaged in drinking on and off the workplace, and straight up said publicly and openly that he promotes drinking buddies. Beyond that, he would hold meetings in which he would tell Blizzard employees that they're lucky to work here, that, they should be grateful, that the pay is fair and they can do nothing about the salaries, they will stand as they do, and that all the employees are replaceable if they don't like working here and if they don't like the conditions. Another way he abused this power was that at one point he made up this executive assistant position with a six-figure sum salary so that he could bring in his escort/masseuse to work at the company so that he could pay her as legal on-payroll prostitution so he wouldn't have to pay out of pocket. So essentially use company money to make it look as if she's been legally hired, and that would be payment for the escort/masseuse job that she actually held for him. And she apparently still remains to this day this individual with no qualifications who was hired just so that Gil Martin could use company money to pay her for her services. And Gil Martin himself has now moved on with Metzen, a previous Blizzard employee, to War Chief Gaming, and I have confirmed this to be true. The masseuse was at one point promoted to business manager with no qualifications by Gil Martin before his departure, and she has openly been on HR records stating that she hates looking at obese people at the company. So beyond her not actually deserving the job that she has, given that it was through abuse of power that she got hired, she's apparently demeaning to the employees within Blizzard. So that's kind of all of the stories that my source shared. There's so many of these stories out there right now that it's really hard to keep up, but this whole story has blown up to the point where plenty of prominent folks within the games industry are now calling for unionization. Former Blizzard developer and ArenaNet Undead Labs founder said that we need unionization in this letter that, a lot of people are rallying around, because unionization at this point seems to be the only way to give employees and ground floor workers power and a seat at the negotiating table, as right now the heads of corporations dictate all of the terms, and obviously they're not taking care of their employees to the degree that they should. And the fact that Bobby Kotick hired a firm known for union busting goes to show that he is scared of employees unionizing, as that means that he'll have less power to exert over them. And while the future remains uncertain, the movement going on here is simply far too big for it to fizzle out. It's a fire far too big for corporations to just be able to dump a little water over it and quench it. We can expect to hear a lot more about this situation and how the industry as a whole changes in light of these allegations and these stories and reports being brought to light. It'll be interesting to see the direction the games industry heads in, and I hope it's one of positive change, one where, for once, the corporations capitulate to the demands of employees so that they have just a safe environment where they can do what they love to do, make games, make experiences that bring joy and fun and immersion and emotions and stories to people. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I want to leave this video off. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on employees' response to Bobby Kotick's awful and empty response and all of the news stories that have come to light. Share your thoughts below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.